All right. Give a few more minutes for people to get on. All our diehards are here. That's exciting. This is becoming old hat now, our third live. So fun. Martha, did the piece arrive yet? Has the mosaic arrived yet from?
No. It's got a weird thing on the tracking. It says it's ready for pickup in New Jersey.
That's
so
weird.
I'll wait a few days because I can't cross the border.
No, you sure cannot. That's strange, but I'm sure it'll get there soon enough.
Yeah,
so
can't wait.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks, Sama. Thanks you too. So are you guys, is anyone here a member of Sama or know what Sama is? You're a member?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. Minnie, are you a member? Yeah. Kelly,
Yes.
Jeannie, are you guys members of Sama? No? Do you know what it is? You guys know what it is though. Yeah. So I am the president for the rest of this term, and then it'll go to somebody else. And so yeah, we're having lots of meetings and potential in-person conference for 22. So it's all very, very exciting. So, all right, as everyone is joining here, we are going to switch the view. So it's gonna be just me. And it's gonna be just pin me. All right. All right, 2:02. We'll give it a couple more minutes for people to arrive. Did people come with questions or any specific needs that you wanted to have met today? Because today's kind of about, I'm going to start working on the piece that if you were with me last month, you saw I kind of threw out all of the materials and said, yep, this is what it's going to be. And now the substrate is made and the pieces are sort of dry laid out as to how I think it's going to go. And I don't know how it works for all of you, but for me, when I'm creating, there kind of has to be this sort of like flood of an image and what it means and where it's going in my head before I can create. And I don't really create in imagery unless it's a commission. It's just not my thing to do the mermaid unless someone's paying me to do the mermaid. So I like to work in abstract. I like to work in, it's just my own version of how to flow and how to make it work. So today started that kind of process where I made the substrate this week. It's ready to go. I'm going to show you guys a few things on the substrate that happened that I think you might find interesting. And then sort of, begin to lay down a few of these pieces and discuss, the choice of using the black tinted mortar and why. And this piece obviously will not be grouted, but as a lot of us do work doing these kinds of pieces, much like how Kelly teaches in her Mind the Gap course, space is definitely a big part of when I create. I like to have a lot of space on my substrate. So in the end, it's really important that the substrate gets cleaned up at the end, or you do what you want to do to it so it looks really pretty. So right now it's not perfect, and that's totally okay. And I actually just ordered the hanging hardware from Amazon today. So I know I won't be putting a lot of the pieces down, but it'll at least be, it's where it's going to go. I'm leaving that space open. So if I do glue some pieces down today, which I plan to do, then I'll still be able to put the hanging hardware on. And for this one, I'm using something that's actually not in our tutorial, but it's what I've used for all of my really large scale commissions, the mermaid and the family mural and all that. And many of you may be familiar with it. It's called a French cleat. And so I'm putting a French cleat on this because it has so much, it's going to have a lot of weight on it. And when you use Weddy board and a lot of weight, you really got to make sure you're dispersing it well. And sometimes just those two screws, even with the washers and the D-rings, you're just basically dispersing the weight to one nail or maybe two nails. And with a French cleat, you can disperse the weight more evenly. And that can be really important when you're doing larger pieces and pieces that actually can be, you know, longer than they are, you know, more horizontal in length than they are in vertical in length. So I'll have to either just take some pictures or do a quick video of it, and maybe we'll add it to our, that's what we'll probably do, is just I'll shoot it and then add it to our tutorial we already have on how to install hanging hardware. So it looks like most of you are here. So I think what I'm going to do is I will flip the camera over so you guys can see what it is. And then Beverly Wentworth, who I'm not sure is here. No, she wanted to see a demonstration on how to cut unglazed porcelain 2-inch. I have 2-inch and 1-inch, 2x2s and 1x1s, and with some different nippers. So I'm going to give you guys that demo as well so that you all can see it, and it'll be recorded here for everyone else when the time comes. All right, so hold on. Now you see where things have started to develop with the mosaic here. And so before we get into this, let's just cover this because then I can move the mosaic more into the center. So here you have 4 different nippers. These are the new ones that someone was talking about on F&F the other day. I can't remember exactly who, but it is, they're a great pair of nippers. They're called glass tile nippers or something like that. But what I really love about them is there are 3 different levels of how much they open. So if you do have something really thin like Velati or whatever, they just about touch, which is huge because a lot of Leponettes and Montolets don't come all the way. They just about come all the way and then barely open, so your hand doesn't have to work as hard if it's something that is really thin. And then you have your 1 and then your 2. And then obviously this is like how you work with any other nipper. It's got the numbers there to help you, you know, turn them so you can use the whole life of the wheel, and you need an Allen wrench. It doesn't come with an Allen wrench, so I'm guessing it is. I haven't really tested that part of it to see what happens when you try and loosen them or take off the wheels to change or just to spin them. So they're super lightweight, which is really fun. So I guess if you didn't see the post on FNF, they are back stock at, or back ordered at Wits End, and they'll be in October. So, but they're about 50, 60 bucks, I think they were. I've used them with some stained glass, but right now what I have here is this 2x2 of unglazed porcelain. And if you're ever having trouble with trying to cut things that are really hard, one of the reasons may be where you're putting the nippers on the tile. And a lot of people, maybe if they've not been trained, are going to try and put the nipper all the way, no matter what the nipper is, all the way onto the tile and push the tile as far down as it goes and expect it to do what you want it to do, right? That's not right. That's wrong. So basically, when you break tile, you want to leverage the tool as much as possible. And to do that, let's just go with these 3 right now. And this is, like I said, unglazed porcelain. What you want to do is you only want to put it about 1/8 of an inch into the tile, into the tool. So this is barely touching the tile. And I've got it right in the center, which is always the best place for something to be broken, whether it's stained glass or tile. And I'm just going to hold those sides and it breaks pretty easy. Not a super straight cut, but a pretty good cut. Okay, so that's that tool. Now these are the Montolets, and this is what Kelly uses, Knickerbocker, in, you know, all of her courses, and she uses a lot of unglazed porcelain. So does Erin Pankratz in her DOTS online course. So these are kind of the go-to tools that most of us are using. Again, the same thing. We're just barely putting the tile into the wheels. This one, you know, if you want it to go straight, you got to do that sort of angle thing because of the way that tiles are angled. And it cuts pretty easily. Now, compound nippers. These I only really bring out when I'm working with high fire tile. So the picture that I posted for the July challenge, all of the color flowers, well, I guess you guys only saw one. Well, no, on the email I sent all the flowers. I did a bathroom, a men's and women's bathroom at a community art workshop place here in Santa Barbara, 44 square feet. And So what I did is all of the colors are high fire tile. So we broke them with a hammer and then we use these tools. So if you have peeked into the vertical installation course, you'll see a lot of that because I use the high fire tile to show you how to do that. And that's really good for places that get a lot of freeze thaw and all that. And then all the white tile, that's the background in the pieces at the community workshop place, are all low fire. High fire, compound nipper, same idea. Can you see that? Barely going into the tool. There it goes. Barely going into the tool and then just nip. And this is probably your best, this, you could do this all day and it's not going to hurt your hand at all. It doesn't always give you the straightest cut. It's kind of the least sexy, but now let's just say you want something really thin and you do need to get in there. You can do it, but you're probably going to sacrifice, like to get a stick like that, you had to sacrifice the other side of the tool. But if you do want to learn how to make sticks and have them in your mosaic artwork like this with the 2x2s, I highly recommend Erin Pankratz's Dots Everything Color online course. So much to learn in that. This is just part of it. And I know David Jarvinen is selling these. These are the 2x2s he's selling. And I think you can get the 1x1s from, well, you can get the Cinca ones. These are doll tile, but you can get Cinca brand from Wits End. And then for these things, I just, you just can take a blade and it just cuts off really, really easily. So those things come off easily because they come with most of them. So here again, the 1x1 is a little bit smaller, same idea. All these little tools. And then the compound nipper. And I'll show you really quick with the side biters, but I just think side biters are kind of a thing of the past with all of our tools that we have available to us now. These work, they sort of crush the tile a little bit. They're just not the most comfortable. They're really old school. And I don't recommend you use the Leponettes for this, because if you are using them for glass, it's going to really, really mess up your wheels and they're just not going to last as long. So does anyone have any questions yet?
Tammy, I had something to say.
Please.
Those new nippers that you have,
Yeah.
the QEPs, will you bring them back for a minute?
Will I bring them back?
Bring them back into the, yeah. So you said there's no Allen wrench, right? To do that, if you turn it over.
Oh,
it should be right there.
One. Look at that. See how busy I am? I don't even get to look at my tools well enough. Okay, so it comes with one. There you go. Yes. Thank you.
You're
that's
welcome.
Awesome. Good to know. It looks like it's basically the same one as the Leponettes, but oh, that's fantastic. Ha! Learn something new every day. Every part of every day. Okay, so let me just clean this mess up a little bit. Does anyone else have a question about those, or when they're cutting, or always to know to?
I had a quick question, Tammy.
Go ahead.
I've seen some people say that they use like power tools to cut something that's hard, or like porcelain.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not sure, like in all my years, the only time I bring out a power tool, which is either a ring saw or a tile saw, is, I mean, if you want the perfect cut of a, like a mug, like half of a mug or half of a, what is it called? Like in Mark Brody's fountain course, he takes a tile saw and pushes a basin through so it's perfectly flat on the side that's going to go on the substrate, because you're taking a round thing and trying to go across its cross section and cut it in half. But using saws and different things for just this type of stuff is really not necessary. Just, you need to know how to use the tools and you should be fine. I mean, grinders, that's a different story. If you want to use a grinder to try and smooth out your edges, or get things to fit tighter together, then that's where your grinder or your tile stone and those things come in. But when it comes down to the cutting of those tiles, I really don't think a tile saw is necessary. I would bring the tile saw out way back in the very beginning when I was cutting a lot of strips and a lot of straight edges. And I was using 6x6 tiles because that was the easiest thing to do. But I'm talking, this is like late 90s, early 2000s. So I haven't used a tile saw in I don't know how long. And a ring saw can be really fun. If you don't have a ring saw, you've never worked with one, those can be fun because what's great about the ring saw, it can cut like a dish if you want to get, you know, half of a dish cut off so that it can be flat, like a basin. Not the basins are too big, but a cup, a teacup. They are great for cutting into things and like coming back out. So in Kelly Knickerbocker's color glass on glass with her color bling texture, she uses a ring saw to cut into glass and different things come back out. And now you've got this negative space. That's where the mortar can go or the grout can go. And so those are, to me, how you use those power tools. But to just have to cut your porcelain and your squares to just get straight cuts, no, you don't need power tools or Dremels or any of that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other questions before I start talking about this beast?
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, one question. Now I've forgotten what the question was. Oh, crockery. I'm still confused. If I'm cutting a plate, what nipper do I use?
You should just try out what feels good. It depends how thick the crockery is. If it's really, really, really thick and heavy, then you want to bring in your compound nippers.
Okay.
If it's not super thick, then you can use your Montolits. Again, unless it's like china, you know, the kind of thin porcelainy china, I wouldn't use your Leponettes unless you just plan to, you know, spin the wheel a lot or get new wheels. But these tools are, these two especially, and I think this one, as people will get it more in the fall, are designed to do a lot of the work for you. So especially this one makes cutting everything really easy. And you can put a rubber band around here so you don't have to have your hand as expanded like as mine is right now, because you'd still be able to get a tile inside of there. So these are light, and these are always available. I think I'm sure I got them online, but I think you can get these at Home Depot, but I think Home Depot makes their own brand now. So
those are the compounds?
These are the compound nippers. Yeah, and they're light.
At wit's end.
Say that again?
I got it at wit's end.
Oh, okay, perfect. Exactly. Yes, exactly. They sell those there. So just try out your different, you know, nippers for whatever you're working on, because sometimes these guys can be too strong and they can shatter what you're working on. Like you would never use these for smalty. You would never use it for something fragile and soft. Like here's a perfect example. This is an old plate that's part of like this collection. And I know I can use these on this, but I can already feel and see the clay in here that it doesn't need these really strong ones. And it's probably going to do a little crumble if I break it right now. But let's see. No, it didn't. Well, there's a little powder, but these would have done just as well with these guys. And there's, I think and the wheels just give it, there was not as much powder, and the wheels just kind of are a little more gentle, a little more finesse than these are really your burly ones when you're really trying to break something hard, especially like high fire tile. So what I've got here is the beginnings of this mosaic. And what's kind of awesome about this mosaic is this is truly the first piece that I have made, aside from that Mexican blanket you guys saw last time that Martha Burke so kindly bought through the 100 Moments season 4 for Sama. And so I have kind of taken this last couple of years, well, year and a half, to decide to make stuff just for me, that I am not going to do any commissions right now. And I've passed them on to a couple other mosaic artists, the ones that have come to me. And right now, I'm in a space to just sort of, you know, do my own thing. So this piece is sort of the beginning of that. And I've been collecting and foraging for a long time and kind of finding my favorite pieces. But the way the piece starts is it is 24 by 16. So it's a lot longer than it is wider. And it starts with this piece at the top that will come off the edge. And then it's just kind of this falling down gravity sort of experience. It's going to go down to here. So this is all, you know, not glued down yet, but we're here to commit a few pieces. You guys could do it with me. And I'm going to talk about how the black comes through some of this clear glass and how that can be good or bad. And then we'll lay down some of this metal stuff just because why not? But I did want to show you one thing. So when I mix my thin set or mortar that's tinted black, here in Santa Barbara, we have incredibly hard water. It's full of just so much junk, chlorine and all the other crap that, you know, they have to put in hard water. And so so we have soft water in our house, but you can't really use soft water to mix your thin set as well because there's tons of salt in it. So what I use is RO water, reverse osmosis water, whenever I'm mixing what's going to become something that's visual, like the thin set I'll use when I made my substrate. But when I was making the substrate, at the end, I had rinsed off, this is how you can tell it's Santa Barbara water. I rinsed off my foam brush, I was done with it, and it dribbled onto the substrate. So that is what Santa Barbara water will do to, or hard water can do to your mortar that's tinted. So just be very aware of that when you are making your mortar. And if people have issues and they all of a sudden see this like weird stuff come out, that's usually why it happens. So now let's see if I can put my masterpiece back together. I'm not probably going to go that far. But anyway, that is just a little tip and trick. So let's get down here and I'll just quickly, I mixed this up like right before we started. Oh, it's already it's a little warm here today. So yeah, we won't get too far. So I don't know how many of you have seen Rachel Sager's course or got it, but her consistency of mortar and the footage that she shot of it is just amazing, which maybe you've seen on Instagram. So this is just a big chunk, and I'm actually going to lay this piece down because I really feel like it's kind of the anchor. It's sort of going to be the focal point, even though it's way down here. It's going to be kind of how this whole thing pulls together. So I'm going to put a little bit on the back, and it's clean, believe it or not. I washed all this stuff as best I could before. So I'm pretty much just looking for where the contact points are. So there's a little bit more there, and you want to be really careful. I'm not working as clean as I could. Oh, there we go. We just don't want it to touch the front if it doesn't have to. Nope. We're going to get this over that. And now I'm going to put a little bit here. And I've drawn a really, really light line kind of down how I see these pieces getting laid down. And I really, the most important part is I want it to be at an angle, and I want it to, there we go. I want it to just sort of fall off as though it's kind of coming off a little bit. Okay. So let me just get my hands a little cleaner. And in a moment, I'll clean up some of this because what will go in this space is going to be really still kind of undecided, still kind of up in my head. But basically, I get most of my ideas. I don't know how I do know how one other artist work, but for me, I get most of my ideas usually beach walks, in yoga, when I'm practicing yoga, different things like that is sort of where I all of a sudden have the, oh yeah, I like that idea kind of thing in my head. And then it's all about laying it out and kind of execution of it. But when you work in this type of style without an image, there still has to be something somewhere that's guiding you. So for me, unfortunately, it's in my head. So you all just have to see it kind of come to life. So I think I'm just going to do a couple more of these, and then I would love to, you know, hear where you guys are in your process and what you guys are working on. And we can also, I wanted to talk about the challenge. I really loved your guys' reactions and what people were saying about how they felt about it. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So this, I kind of want to have it at tilt. So those are like two circles next to each other. I'm not putting that one down yet. I'm not 100% on it. I did want to put one down that had the clear glass so you could see kind of the thin set come through. I'm going to commit to this one, and then I'll have to work around it. But just that way you can see. So when you use black, obviously, mortar behind your glass, you got to make sure you cover the whole thing, because you don't want it to look like you skimped. Okay. And now we'll lay that down. So that's going to be what I kind of love about that is it took a little bit of that bling away. So it's sort of like connected more to the substrate than it is to a piece of glass just hanging out. So can you see that? It's sort of, it just won't be as bright. Like these are a little too bright for me and this isn't, but it's still, once it's all together, we'll have things offsetting it that will contrast with it and make it still come forward. And then all the, whatever is going to happen in there. So just for the sake of, I doubt you guys want to sit here and watch me make a big hot mess, which I probably will. We can discuss kind of where you guys are in your process. So let me turn the camera back around and we can discuss. All right. Oh, let's do that. There we go. So here we are. So does anyone have any questions or thoughts or how things went for them this last?
Are you going to show your further progress with the piece that you're making that you just showed
Oh
us?
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. As I work on it, you guys will
wanna
see it
see
come
that.
along. Oh, for sure. For sure. And probably you might not see much happen between now and next month, but it'll be a work in progress with you guys. And yes, I'm sure I'll dig in a little bit more in the coming weeks. We are busy here. We've got lots of bookings and lots of filming happening. But it's still, yeah, got to squeeze in some time for myself as well. But so does anybody first off have any questions, like where they're at? Are they struggling with anything that they want to share or talk about? Nada. Okay. Does anyone have anything about, you know, the challenge? What are you guys, someone posted a picture of a really pretty sunflower. Is that Martha?
I think so.
Yeah, and then you did the cupcake from the month
Yes.
before. So tell me your experience working with the unglazed porcelain and what you used for nippers and how it went for you.
Well, I just used wheeled nippers, but I didn't know if it was, I've got it here. I'll just sort of.
Yeah.
I have to get better lighting from it.
That's okay. That's great. Yeah.
But so I wasn't sure though, when I was doing the cutting, if it looked too rough, and that's why then I was looking and people were saying, well, I use a power tool or a Dremel or something, and I'm thinking, I'm a klutz, I don't want to go there. So
you know,
that's
if
why I thought,
the only thing you could use that may help is a grinder, and a grinder is just going to give you the rounder edges. And I don't care about my grinder in a way that some people care with the bit. If it gets used for ceramic or if it gets used for glass, just buy another bit when it wears down. But I just have your typical superstar glass grinder. That's really, it's a stained glass, obviously, tool for stained glass artists. But I have had one from the beginning of time. In the 90s, I bought it when I lived in LA. And I am a firm believer in the grinder. I don't think you have to, you know, be so perfect with your cuts. And you'll see the next course we are launching is Mary Driver. And if you follow her at all, she's an amazing stained glass mosaic artist, and she's teaching about reflection in water. And she is a grinder-holic, like everything gets the grinder. And she doesn't care. She's not about the school of like what's right, what's wrong. She's about the school of what looks good and how it works for her. And I'm in that school as well. So I think if anything, maybe that's what, when someone recommended the Dremel, that's what they're talking about, is just grinding the edges. But it's a lot easier to do it when the grinder's on the table and you can use both hands to manipulate the tile. And my assistant, when I did that large bathroom, he was a real stickler and perfectionist, and he used that grinder down to the bone. I had to buy a new bit. So, I recommend if that's what's frustrating you, and it will slow you down in your work, but if it'll make you happier because your shapes get to where you're trying to go, just use a lot of water. Make sure there's always water on it. You never want the silica to come loose and breathe it in ceramic or glass. And and I think you'll see the results you're looking for. And then if you don't want to go the whole route of the grinder, then just get the tile stone. And you can get those at Home Depot for like $9. And then just, again, keep them wet. And that's what Gila Rayberg uses. Gila's, she's not a grinder girl, but she's a full on, especially for her piqué assiette stuff. She's a tile stone.
Okay.
So it just can take that little like nub off that's, bugging you. Or if you really want to shape your glass or your ceramic, the unglazed porcelain, then I would use the grinder.
Okay. Okay. And for the sunflower, if I can ask a question. So I have a problem with backgrounds. I tend to forget about the background until I'm looking at it thinking, why have I got this? So is it better to have, am I too busy in the sunflower, say, and then should I have like a really plain background, or?
No, well, yes. First of all, beautiful cuts on the sunflower.
Oh, thank you.
Doing the little boat shaped cuts and getting them all to fit together so beautifully was awesome. So really happy to see that. And the two things with the background, it shouldn't compete with the mosaic, of course, and it should contrast in color. So you need to know, what your contrasting color is to yellow, blue, purple, right? So we can all see it right there on the color wheel behind me. And so you really want to find something that's going to bring out the color of that flower. So yeah, I would say blue. You drew out some really pretty shapes. So I would say that they could be bigger pieces again, so it's not competing with the little pieces in the flower. And I would say it just needs to fit really nicely together. Like, just don't hodgepodge it. Take your time with intentional pieces that you could go back to my demo in under 20. And if you draw out those little patterns, even the size that they are, cut those out and use the wax paper, or just trace them onto your stained glass and cut them.
Okay.
And do that. But yeah, no, you definitely don't want to compete with that flower. It's really beautiful and well done. And I love, that makes me so happy that you just took the challenge and you created something that's, it's going to turn out really pretty. And that's why I don't want these to feel like they have to be big, monstrous, experiences. I just want it to be something that can get you thinking in different directions and learn some stuff.
Yeah, no, it really does help me. It focuses me to sort of get there, where before I'm kind of like starting and
yeah, nothing like a little nudge, a little in some direction. Does anybody else working on the July challenge of a flower? Crickets. You guys got 9 days, 10 days. Oh, Jeannie?
Is it a flower or is it anything from nature? I forget.
Anything from nature.
Okay.
Anything, sorry. Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, I'll mess you all up. No, anything from nature.
I found this, if you can see it, I found this like concrete dove at a flea market a couple of weeks ago. And the person had it covered in glue and some I don't know, I think she called them feathers, but they were long matted so I taken the time to get all of that sanded off. And it really does feel like concrete. It's got a little hollow hole in the bottom. So it's not, it's heavy, but it's not ridiculously heavy.
Right.
And so I've started cutting glass or just nipping glass into little pieces that can be my feathers. So I guess my question is just, what would you use as your adhesive for that?
Is it going to go outside? Is that your?
I didn't intend to it, but I would probably rather make it so that it could be indoor or outdoor.
then it would either be just thin set mortar, or you can use the DAP Quick Seal or the, silicone. And more people like the DAP Quick Seal, just because it's not quite as like stringy and sticky,
Yeah.
messy. The silicone, as if any of you have taken Anne Marie Price's workshop, she works with silicone like it's a dream, and she's like perfect, and she gets it on her toothpick and onto the glass, and then everyone else is like it's everywhere. So I recommend the DAP Quick Seal because it is waterproof, just like the silicone. It's just a little easier to work with, and you don't have to get the mold or the +1, just get the red bottle. And then I highly recommend that you get the white. So it should say, white at the top.
Instead of clear?
Like this.
Okay.
So you see how that says white at the top? Because if you get the clear, it's going to dry clear, and whatever the color under your substrate is going to come through. And for your glass, that could be good or bad. You never know, depending on each one. So I would recommend that it be white, because then that gives you more reflectivity with your glass when the sun or light hits it. The other thing you need to concern yourself with when you're working on that thing is make sure your pieces are small enough so that they wrap around your substrate, because it can be very easy to think you're going to do feathers and all of a sudden they're like, jutting off, or they don't, work around the substrate. So you can make them big, but then cut them or do whatever so that they will find their way around the substrate. So.
Yeah, with that rounded, I wondered that because I thought I could make them a little longer here in the front, but then I wanted to shorten them up back here. Make them look more.
And really, with stained glass, be really conscientious about that, because all of a sudden you'll have something sharp sticking out of it and it's not fun. And then you're going to need a grinder, or you're going to need a tile stone or something to cut it, to soften it. I did learn a cool little trick this past week that I'm going to share with you guys. I don't have any stained glass with me right now, but imagine if I did. I'm going to use a little bit of this Mexican smalty that's in front of me. This is a crazy trick that really works. So you take a jar, and it has to be plastic. Do not use glass, because the glass will break in your hand, and that's bad. But you take plastic in a jar like this, and you can take your stained glass, you can take your china that has got really sharp edges and stuff on it, and it's like a natural tumbler, like a poor man's tumbler, and it will take all the hard edges off your glass. So this is so much softer than it was before I put it in there. So just a little trick. It comes from Laura Rendlin, who's an amazing mosaic artist. And our last artist that was here, she did it in her course. But it's really great when you're using super sharp edges. So you might want to try that. And Martha, you might want to try it too. But, I'd say it's better for like china, like your stained glass might break more than it will, but china, if you're using china and it's really sharp, that's a really great way to soften it enough so that it's not dangerous and it's really fast and easy. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts on what you're working on?
I have a question, not about the challenge. I'm getting ready to do, I've started a commission, and I did not ask for money up front, right? It's my neighbor. But I've only done a few commissions. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure how much, like a contractor, you get 10% up front and then you have scheduled payments. How do you do that? How do you discuss that with somebody when you're
when it's your friend, it's always going to be a challenge, right? If it's somebody you know. But they're also the good people to practice on as well. And so for me, a commission, is no longer like just a handshake. I have a contract and all that. And what I do is a 50% upfront. I don't do 10%. I do 10% for a design fee. And so they have to pay me 10% to get the design, whittled down to what they like and what I'm going to create. And then they pay me 10% then, and then they pay me 50% to get started. So I get 50% to start, and then I've never felt the need to get paid throughout the process. I get paid when it's finished. I prefer that when we close the deal, it's installed, it's grouted, it's done. That's when I get my final payment. And I just prefer to work that way. But there's people that, yes, do it where they get paid throughout the time and they want 30% and then 30% and whatever. But it's just never been my thing. I have never had a lawyer drop my contract. It's sort of a very simple contract, kind of, that you could probably get at Staples or something like that. Like I said, I think in the last live I do have a change fee on there that's super important. Probably not for your neighbor, but when you do start doing more and it's people that are, you know, asking for things and all of a sudden they change their mind, I do have a 10% change fee. And that's really important as well, because if you have to go in there and spend more time and more money on materials and stuff like that, it shouldn't come out of the original price of the commission. It should be something more, because it wasn't up to you to make that change. They did it.
Right. Okay.
But yeah,
Thank you.
I think a deposit is fair. And it's mostly, you know, also fair because you need to buy the materials to make it. So
Right.
You should definitely get something up front so that you can get started. And there should be something signed, even if it's your friend, it should be signed, because it's good practice. And B, it makes them see that you're taking it more seriously. And that's really important. You know, I did lots of handshakes in the beginning. I even had one woman ask me if I wanted to buy back a mirror she bought from me. And I'm like, that is the weirdest thing I've ever heard of. No, I don't want to buy back my artwork you paid me for. So there's some crazy people out there. So you kind of have to really protect yourself and not assume everyone's going to come across this the same way you are.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate with this one because it's just lambs. So it's white and cream. So it's not expensive glass that I already actually have. So that's why I'm not even worried about getting upfront money from her. But it would be nice to get to practice what I need to do for the future.
That's more about what to me, what it would be about is it's really just practice. I mean, for whatever it's worth, you guys here all at different levels, there's no reason to not think of yourself as, you know, wanting to reach the next level. And you're not here to just waste your time. You're here to learn and grow and say, in a year, look how far I came. And so a year from now, you're getting real commissions that aren't just your friends, which is how I started. And, you know, so it is something to think about and practice so that you can just get comfortable with it and do it the right way. And protect yourself. Minnie, you have your hand up on the board, but I don't see your picture. I didn't know if you're listening or have a question.
I am. I'm right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a question. I'm panicky right now because some of my pieces, I would say about 8, popped off. And I'm wondering, because I used the Mapei tile and glass mortar.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, what did I do wrong? So I'm pretty advanced right now. Like I'm almost finished with the piece and it doesn't look like what is on what I posted. I'm thinking about putting contact paper, see if I can stick all the pieces, you know, the sticky film on top, and then hopefully clean it up and then put it back on mortar when I apply it on the stepping stone.
So when
Does
you
that
say
make sense?
No, when you say the pieces have fallen off using the Mapei, where you haven't stuck it to the stepping stone yet, correct?
No, it's on mesh.
And then what's under the mesh?
The plastic.
So for some reason, if I had to guess, I'd say your mortar might have been too dry when you stuck those pieces that fell. If it's only a few that fell off, I would say that it's because the mortar might have been not at its best time. If it's anything else, it could be not enough mortar. When it's just a few pieces, those are usually the things that are happening. If you do decide to just take contact paper and put it over it once you're done, but usually that means you're going to remove the mesh, but you're not going to remove the mesh because you've already done the thin set to the mesh.
Right.
So the contact paper thing is sort of a extra step you don't have to take, but you can if you want. I mean, you should find out first actually if your pieces are going to fall off before you, because you should just be able to do a direct method now of putting your mosaic on top of the stepping stone.
Right.
So if it were me, I would just say that make sure they're all stuck down before you do that transfer. I would also recommend if you can go to the hardware store and get a concrete sealer and put that onto the stepping stone before you apply the thin set, because concrete is
Porous.
It's porous.
and it releases water. So
Yeah.
times it can release water and it can come from underneath it. So if she decides to water the garden around it, I know she's not stepping on it or whatever, it rains, water can come through it and it can really sacrifice the mortar that way. So I would
Yeah.
recommend just getting a sealer, a concrete sealer on the stepping stone before you add the mortar to it. But otherwise, you know, just make sure you use a really good trowel that's not, you know, it's like a 1/16 of an inch because your tiles are not really too high, so that you can get a really good grip of that mesh to the substrate. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I was just a little worried because so what I started to do was use silicone, little dabs of silicone on the tile and just glue it like that. So the majority of the mortar can be on the tile when I lay it down.
Yeah, I mean, it will be and it won't, because they're tiny tiles and you have the mesh there. So it's in the future, I would recommend doing the contact paper on the bottom if they're all the same height because they're so small, and then doing the tile tape on top and lifting it up, because then the mesh sometimes, especially with small pieces like that, can become more of a barrier than a helper with keeping the pieces glued down to the substrate. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's always good to go directly to your substrate. I mean, I know the mesh can really help, and like, you know, the way Jennifer Coons does it is great, but usually her pieces are, you know, not super tiny. And it can always be sort of a touch and go when the pieces get that small.
Yeah. Well, the reason I did it that way was because I had to let the stone seal, or, you know, like a cure, I should say. And then I'm waiting the 28 days to go ahead and seal it. So in the meantime, I'm working on the piece.
So you made the stepping stone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very
It's a
cool.
20-inch stepping stone.
Oh, very cool. So that's great that you're following all the concrete rules of curing it and taking the time so it can last forever. I love that.
Yeah.
Makes me
Okay.
happy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have
Anybody
a
else?
question. Yes, I have several questions.
Oh,
Okay.
fantastic.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see this. Okay, so this is a piece of birch, I think, plywood. I can't remember what it is, but anyway, what I'm planning to do is use epoxy sculpt and do different gems and crystals and beads and pearls and just kind of make, and I haven't figured it out because I tried it once and it just looked too messy. So I just put everything away.
Okay.
But somebody wrote into one of the chat rooms about using epoxy sculpt. Like, I have a problem with trying to figure out how to hang these things up because
Mhm.
I'm not mechanical
Mhm.
and I don't have a drill
Mhm.
to try to drill holes into these things and then put those little eyelets or something. Somebody had said you can use epoxy sculpt with like the saw, whatever it's called.
The D-rings. You can get little baby D-rings at your hardware store, and then you can take epoxy sculpt, put them on the wood, put the D-rings, you know, where the screws would go, put your
Okay.
screw part, and then just do your wire across, and the epoxy sculpt will hold to both the wood and to the D-ring.
Okay, and even if this is a painted surface, I mean, I've
Yeah,
already.
it
tried
should
with
be
wood
fine.
silver.
I would take a little extra epoxy sculpt and I'd put it on the wood and like make it go longer or wider than the D-ring. And
Yes,
then I would put more of it over
on
the
top of it.
D-ring, not the ring part, but the part that
Yeah.
adheres to the wood over that. So it's really, really solid, and it should, epoxy sculpt will stick to everything but parchment paper and saran wrap. It'll stick to most everything. And you might want to test it on just a piece of wood. Like just go get, you know, some blank scrap that you have and make some epoxy sculpt and shove it onto the wood and make sure it really wants to stay before you commit to this.
Well, I did make a piece using epoxy sculpt as the adhesive, and it was fine.
On a piece of wood,
On a piece of wood,
then there you
yeah.
go.
yeah.
Then you know.
So I don't have to use any screws or anything. I'm just using the D-rings and the epoxy sculpt.
And then you need the wire that goes
And the wire,
between.
yeah.
And I always recommend when these, you know, some people do 2 D-rings and no wire, and you got to find where the nails are going to go. I'm all about 2 D-rings, 1 wire, 1 nail, especially if it's not heavy, like not this piece I'm working on, but you know what I mean? Something like that. It's easy to do it
Well,
that way.
this I'm trying to figure out because I'm going to have crystals and stones and then some beads, but you know, like lapis and garnets and different things. And I don't know how heavy that's going to be.
That's something you'll have to wait and see, and do consider that when you're, you know, when you're making it, as far as the weight and this choice of hanging hardware.
Okay, but if this is thin enough, and I don't think I'm going to be putting that much on, so I'm going to do the epoxy.
Okay,
So,
great.
thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any other thoughts, questions? We're a small group, but everyone's, we've covered a little bit of stuff here. I'm very happy.
So it seems like that with the D-rings and the epoxy sculpt would be a good solution. Like if you, like one thing that I have been bad about as a beginner is just forgetting about how I'm going to hang it. And then I have to figure it out afterwards.
Right.
So it seems like that would be a good way to do it, is with the epoxy sculpt. And okay,
Yeah, if it's
really
something that's
helpful.
light, if it's on wood, if it's a wetty board or there's mortar involved, go watch our, you know, free how to, you know, the hanging hardware one, because there is a section at the end where we show how to take a small piece of wetty board and thin set it to your already made mosaic with hanging wire that's already on it, that's on the little piece you're going to adhere.
Right.
Use your orientation after, because a lot of people have that issue. They don't know the orientation of the piece they're making. Like if I wanted to change the orientation of this, then I better not install the hanging hardware ahead of time.
Yeah.
So that's part of that tutorial. But what Stephanie's doing totally works. And then, you know, we're all in this like school of, oh, you have to do your hanging hardware first. You don't have to. You can totally do it after. It's just make sure the choices you're making are going to work for your piece. The other
Right.
thing to do is get it framed. Like just go to Michael's and get a frame that's going to work.
Right.
But if you're going to do it that way, just make sure that you have enough strength to hold up whatever the weight of your piece is. But it doesn't always have to be decided. And now it's a lot of times it's just not going to be decided before you create.
Oh, good. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of it has to be information out there, and it's just not true. There's ways that we can always have workarounds, and we're artists. We have to break and bend the rules sometimes. You know, there's laws that you don't want the things to fall apart. I've always been break and bend the rules, but don't break the laws. And the laws to me are the integrity of the piece. So that's going to be your substrate, it's going to be your adhesive, and it's going to be your grout if you're grouting it. And then the rules are everything else, you know, figure it out. It's as long as you feel like it's an integral piece and it's going to hold up, then there's many other probably options out there to make it work.
Great. Great. That's a good lesson.
Yes. Steph,
Question, yeah, can I use the epoxy sculpt and the D-rings on Weddy board too?
yeah, that should work.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Again, always test, there's never ever a time that, I say yes and it falls apart and it's my fault. It's your fault. You need to test. You guys have to do it. It's up to me to say, yeah, I've done this in the past and it worked, but there could be something for you that you did differently and it didn't work. And so I just am a firm believer. I never had someone sitting here once a month telling me, all the best ways to do it. I had 2 books or 3 books and a lot of mistakes. So, and I tested things all the time before it was going to be someone else's, nightmare to deal with. So it's really important that you do that. But we've seen how epoxy sculpt does stick to Weddy board and all the ways that it does. So I would say, yes, you should be fine. But again, you're going to feel a lot better if you just mix a little bit of it and jam it on the Weddy board. And you're like, oh, I have my test now. I'm good to go. Yep. Anybody else? Questions? I can't believe this hour just flew by. That was so
Really fast.
really fast, really fast.
Really fast.
Anybody else? What do you guys
I
gonna
have
go
a
work on?
question.
What?
I have not done an undulating substrate yet, but I'm thinking about something. But I'm thinking of pearls and beads and different things that will. But what if I'm using vitreous glass or porcelain or well, smalty? Like, what happens when you get to that curve? How do you put the smalty on so that it's all connected and
You
not
just
pointing up?
glue it on. It depends how deep your undulation is. It depends. You want it to be a smaller piece of smalty so it's not jutting off. You want to make sure you had full surface coverage between your substrate and your tessera. And that's the only thing you really got to worry about is if you're undulating that it all touches the substrate. So it needs to just be usually smaller pieces, kind of like
Okay.
what I was telling Jeannie about the bird, where the thing makes a turn or it's got, curvature. You just want to make sure you're getting full surface coverage. That's really important on any kind of undulating or 3D object. Because if
Okay.
it doesn't, it's going to fall off, it's going to cut somebody, it's going to be a mess. And so like my piece you guys saw last month of the Mexican blanket, that is the undulation, none of it sticks out. It's all, you can go back and look at the picture, it's all touching the substrate somewhere. All of the pieces on it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's very exciting. It's very fun to do undulating substrates. It's a lot of work, but it's very gratifying to put the pieces together and do all that with the mesh and the mortar. Very fun.
I'm not there yet.
That's okay.
I did a very nice piece like that, but I haven't actually put tessera on it. But I just put 2 towel rolls, so it looks real pretty. But I just haven't had the time to do it yet.
Yep. I took probably about 5-6 years ago Marion Shapiro's workshop at SAMA, and I think I still have large amounts of undulating substrates up in my studio here that are collecting more dust than anything. But yeah, they're awesome. It's a really, really great substrate to do fun stuff on. And you guys have that course in the lineup of courses here. So check it out.
Yeah, I just finished watching it and I loved it. It was so fun. I can't wait to do it.
Thank you. You'll appreciate that.
I watched it and I couldn't believe it was just a paper towel roll. I was like, really? That's how she did it?
And
It
saran
was
wrap.
fun to watch
That's
too.
it. That's all you need.
Mhm.
I mean, that's kind of just like the crazy thing about it. It's really not rocket science. It's not rocket science. The rocket science was that the camera kept breaking down in the middle of making those substrates. And it brought me to tears. And so Jerry went out and bought a new camera that
Oh
night.
no.
It's a good story. But that's how we've grown. So it's all good. You guys, a full hour has gone by and I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing. And I look forward really to seeing all your pieces. Martha, Minnie, Kelly, tell me how it goes with the commission. You guys keep doing what you're doing. It's really awesome. I appreciate you getting on here. I know it's hard in the middle of a day, but for those of us that can do it, it's great. And Everyone else will have it in the recording. You can go back and see it. And I'll be making the demo in under 20 is going to be really cool. That's coming out in the next couple days. So you'll see that, and that'll give you even more ideas of cool stuff to do.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank
thank
you. We'll
you.
see you guys again
Thank
soon.
you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.